The Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress with you. Happy to welcome Karl Kesell back to Word Balloon. He of the greatest eyeglasses in comics. I love those, man. You always have great specs. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Well, these are my Impossible Jones glasses because they're yellow and black. I mean, really, when I went to get glasses, I was looking for frames, and they said, you know how they have those sliding cases, and there's more hidden behind. And the salesman goes, there's more behind that one over there. And I went over and I slid it, and these were there. And I said, that's them. Those are the ones. It was like love at first sight.
Absolutely, man. That's fantastic. Jeez. Clearly not something you'd find right away at Vision Works or one of the typical America's Best or whatever. Or was it at something?
No. Eyes on Broadway. If you live in Portland, this is their plug. Portland, Oregon, Eyes on Broadway. They got great selection.
That's great, man. Outstanding. You mentioned, of course, yes, the yellow and black signify the colors of Impossible Jones.
Indeed.
The thief turned reluctant superhero, but she's making it work for her. And you got a brand new Kickstarter going on, a 60-page novella, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I think of these as floppies, but when you get up to it's not floppy. It's always square bound. It looks more like our last one was 80 pages, and we did a 80-page giant alternate cover for it. It looked like the old DC comics. So this isn't quite that big, but it's still going to rack in around 60 pages, maybe longer if we hit stretch goals. That's always a possibility.
I understand you got about 2 weeks left in your Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, 2 weeks from Friday. So usually I start on a Tuesday, end on a Thursday, but my timing this year was very bad, and Thursday would have been Thanksgiving. And you know how many people would be paying attention to Kickstarters on Thanksgiving? That many. That's right. So I was talking to Terry Moore, who actually was launching Kickstarter the exact same day, and he said, go to Black Friday, end on Black Friday. That's what I'm going to do. And Terry's a smart guy, so I'm just following his lead.
No, that's great, man. I see he did a variant cover for you for this campaign, correct?
Yeah, well, it wasn't for this campaign. It was for a previous campaign. He did variant cover the same month, the same issue or book, whatever you want to call it, that Adam Hughes did one. Terry Moore did one. But I'm going to plug Terry's Kickstarter now. Terry's doing a Kickstarter which is called Terry Moore Covers, and he's collecting all the covers he's done for books that he's written and drawn himself. Now, he has not written and drawn Impossible Jones, but he did draw a cover. And so I contacted Terry, like I phoned him. It was typing really. And I contacted Terry and I said, we've got these campaigns going on the exact same time. Why don't we take that cover you did for Impossible Jones, which has Kachu on it. So it has a Strangers in Paradise connection. And I said, why don't we make a print of it, print it up the same size as your book pages are going to be, lay it out the same way your book pages are going to be laid out. Terry's going to do little commentaries. I don't know if he's going to do it on all the covers, but at least on some of the covers. So I said, so we put just a few words from you saying what you're thinking of when you drew this cover. And if you back both campaigns, Impossible Jones and Terry Moore Covers, you'll get this. You could slide it in the back cover of Terry's book, and it'll be like an addendum, to all the other covers he has. It was just happy coincidence.
That sounds great, man. No, that sounds great. That's excellent.
Yeah, I think it's a nice little extra something. Terry told me he was going to write up his little write-up last weekend, but he's a busy boy, and so I'm waiting to see exactly what he says about how he thought up the cover myself. I'm very interested.
Sure. No, that's terrific, man. I should probably bug you after the show and get Terry's contact info. He's yet to be on Word Balloon.
I'm sure he'd love
I
it.
haven't had the occasion. I've only met him briefly, I think in San Diego. God, almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And but no, always a fan, and always happy to see his stuff when it pops out. So yeah, I'm happy to help him, just like we're helping you this episode. Keith Champagne is coming up, everybody, in the days ahead to help him on his campaign. But always happy to talk about the new stuff. So Impossible Jones, how many issues has it been so far now?
Well, we did originally a graphic novel, which was the equivalent of 4 issues. And then we did, I should be more organized because I should have the latest Impossible Jones book right at my fingertips, and I do not have it here.
It's all right. I didn't have time to bring up images either.
This was the second Impossible Jones Kickstarter or a collection. And this collected 4 separate comics, but those were, the first one was 30 some pages, and the last Impossible Jones of those 4 was 64 pages or something like that. So this book is 260 pages long. Collecting those 4 books were that we did release those independently. They were team up books. So we had Impossible Jones and Holly Days. Here we are. And Impossible Jones and Captain Lightning, Impossible Jones and Polecat, Impossible Jones and American Angel. And then this is a character, Persephone, who usually shows up a lot. And even Steven, who is a favorite of the Impossible Jones crowd. Anyways, she was teaming up with all these characters. I just like team up books. And it seemed like a good way to, because we had an idea for this big story. And I thought, let's just pull back a little bit. Let's do these little team up stories and get to know the characters, get to know their city, their world more, and really kind of flesh that out. And that was the intention. I always knew parts 3 and 4 were going to be connected. And when I was writing part 2, I saw a way to connect it with 3 and 4. And then I said, but I'd already written part 1. That was done. That book was done at that point. And I said, so is there anything in part 1 that I could pull in to tie this? And it was there. It was like I had planned it all along. And I didn't. No, it was a happy mistake. So this became a big sprawling epic, which it never was supposed to be. It was supposed to be 4 smaller stories. And like I said, that last story became very large. And then when we did the collection, we added 12 more pages of epilogue to that last chapter. So it became huge. And I'm really proud of this book. It's a great book. And I am especially proud that we have this Arthur Adams fold out in the back.
Wow. So
he was a real gent and found some time in his schedule and did an Impossible Jones fold out. I was thrilled. So anyway, depending on how you look at it, we have 2 hardcover books or 1 hardcover book and then 4 floppies, which are collected here. So that's how many Impossible Jones books there have been. Now we're doing a new one, which is called Impossible to Love. That's the name of it. And I will say right up front, it's not a schmaltzy love comic. We do a schmaltzy love comic cover, which David drew, and it's like, Impossible to Love. It's I think a really fun cover. And for whether it's on purpose or just happy accident again, I think it has a real kind of like John Buscema 1970s, 60s Marvel love story comic cover feel, which I love. I think that's perfect. So, but inside, it's, I think, the same sort of Impossible Jones story people have enjoyed so far, which is, fast-paced adventure, a lot of witty banter, I think some interesting characters and some interesting situations. And the plot of it is basically, at this point, in this big story, by the end of it, all these characters at the bottom are one way or another taken out of action. And the only hero left standing in New Hope City, the city Impossible Jones lives in, is Impossible Jones. She's the only line of defense they have left. And so she becomes a deputized officer of the law. Now, she's a thief, and she's still a thief, and she's been stealing things, using the doors that open to her as a protector of the city. She's been using that to her nefarious advantage. And now that she's in the police department and knows a lot more, she's looking for one last big score, something that can set her up for the rest of her life, and she can just go live in Fiji or whatever she wants to do. And that's a great plan until she runs into a guy named Demolition. And Demolition is a gun for hire for the bad guys. He has no use for authority figures whatsoever. And she finds she really hits it off with him. And she's supposed to bring him in, but she likes the guy and he seems to like her. And so that's what Impossible to Love is all about, is this push and pull about, I got to keep my cover up. I can't tell him that one of the reasons we're connecting is we are both criminals. You know, we both have no use for authority figures. She can't tell him that. And yet they just keep being drawn together each time the paths cross. And, anyways, so that's the basic idea. And we're calling it Impossible to Love, a prologue, because it's setting everything up for this last arc where Impossible Jones is going to make her last big play. And either it's all going to come together or it's all going to crash and burn. And that's what our next big arc is.
That's great, man. And that's amazing. So the prologue will stand on its own, though.
Yes, the prologue is a self-contained story. I think it's a really good story. I mean, I wrote it, yeah. But there's times, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but there's times when you finish a drawing and you go, I nailed that. I got it right. And there's times when you finish the story and you go, I nailed it. I got it right. I really think I got this one right. And, David does wonderful work art-wise every single time.
Absolutely.
So I'm just trying to raise my game to match his, really. But I think it's a really good story that people should read.
In fact, there's a preview of the story on the Kickstarter page.
Yes, there is.
So you can get a taste of it. And and again, I think the images that you've got up and the ones that are represented by your two collections, but also your previous issues. No, it's a really fun thing, and I'm glad it's doing so well. I hear the system works apparently, Karl, because B Things just pledged on Kickstarter.
Woo, woo, woo. Thank you, B Things.
So it's always good to see that, and thank you, B Things, for
thank you very much.
supporting, and that's terrific, man. You may want to check out Terry Moore's.
I've got there on my Kickstarter page. There's a link right to Terry's page. So
there you go.
You support him, you support me. You get that nice print. Although we're working on stretch goals and we're adding things to the book even as we speak. And so David, I could probably show you this.
Sure. This is great. Karl provides his own images, which I always appreciate.
I'm sorry. I thought I should have planned.
Oh, big tease. No,
David did this beautiful watercolor of Impossible Jones, kind of as a Barbarella-like character.
Fantastic.
And he sent me the original, and every single person who backs the campaign is going to get one of these. 41st Century Jones is what I call it, and it's absolutely stunning. And the original is amazingly large. So that's one thing everybody gets who backs the campaign. We've also got a little chibi sticker where Impossible Jones is kind of cutely drawn by a wonderful artist named Giancarlo Bernal out of the Philippines. I ran across his stuff years ago, and he is an amazing artist. I mean, he's doing these cute little chibi drawings for me, but if you see, he's done work. There's a book called Keisha Demon Eater that he drew. He's drawn Crescent City Monsters was a book. Oh, these are all both Kickstarter books, by the way. Crescent City Monsters is another book he drew, and both written by Newton Lavoie, I believe you say his name is said. And they all revolve around kind of like Louisiana voodoo sort of gods and monsters and stuff like that. And cool. I'll tell you, Giancarlo is an astounding artist. Astounding. I mean, I'm shocked that Marvel and DC have not grabbed him at this point. But he's also very loyal. He's very loyal to Newton, and I'm glad he is, because they do wonderful, wonderful work together.
Well, the chibi is also, you can see it, everybody, on the Kickstarter page. Also, I see that Terry Dodson has an alternate cover.
Terry's working on it. The one that I have on the page is he did a pinup for the very, very first Impossible Jones hardcover. And so this time around, I said, Terry, I want you to do a cover. I want a cover from you. And he said, sure, I'll do that. And he said he'd do it in November, it's now. Now is November. And so I'm waiting to see his. But we did just get in our other alternate cover, which is Ty Templeton did one. And that is, if you scroll on the page, you can see that. And it's a beautiful infinity cover. So it's impossible, and as Ty calls it, an impfinity cover because of impossible notes. But it's, she's reading a comic, but she's hanging upside down and reading the comic. And on the comic, she's hanging upside down. So on the comic, she looks right side up. And it's more than just infinity. It's like this back and forth thing. And Ty did an astounding job.
I'm looking at it now. It's excellent, man. And, I truly, and also really, I Karl, all these characters and stuff. No, you've really fleshed out this Impverse, and I wonder, will you possibly focus on some of the other heroes that you've introduced after your Impossible Jones story wraps up? Are you going to stay in the Impverse, or are you going to go to other places?
Well, I think the answer is both. I mean, no, there were in those floppy 4-issue Impossible team-up books, we always had backup stories, and they always involved the character Even Steven, because Even Steven is clearly a breakout character in the book. I mean, I gave this collection to one of our neighbors who is the principal at my daughter's high school or elementary school, and they're very supportive and very excited. And so I gave him this book, and he was reading it, and we dog sit for them. So almost every weekday, the wife brings over their dog, and they play with our dog. And she came over one day and she goes, Michael was reading your book last night, and he said you should do more with this character. And she pointed at Even Steven. This is a guy who doesn't read comics, and out of nowhere, he picked a character that everyone else has picked. Even Steven's a real breakout character. And we had backup stories in those floppies about Even Steven. And those stories are not collected in this book because we're going to do an Even Steven book. We'll collect those backups, and those backups end on a bit of a cliffhanger. So we will flesh that out, and it'll also be a hardcover like this. So it'll be Even Steven hardcover, and that probably will be our very next book, I think. So early 2025, we'll do that one.
Excellent. So while we're on the subject of Even Steven, you want to give us a little more background on the character?
Okay, Even Steven is a guy who believes deeply to the core of his being that good will triumph over evil in a fair fight. So he has the ability to exactly match whoever he's fighting. So if he's fighting Galactus, he has the power of a Galactus. If he's fighting a 2-bit thug, he has the power of a 2-bit thug. If the thug's a really good shot, he's a really good shot. I imagine if the thug is nearsighted, he's nearsighted. Because it has to be equal, or it means nothing to him. The triumph of good has to be in a fair fight. And that sometimes presents problems. I mean, even in this book, he stops the heroes from defeating the villain because they've outpowered him. And he goes, this isn't fair at all. And he like throws some of the heroes away, so he is a man defined by his philosophy, not by his powers.
Interesting.
And that's what I love about him. So,
wow, that's like little Peter Cannon Thunderbolt with a little, I'm trying to think of who, someone came to mind as you were describing him, and that, I mean, obviously there's a rogue element, I suppose, to him as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the picture,
I'll zoom in again.
No, there. If you look at that picture,
yes,
he's obviously got some Mr. A in him. I mean,
yes, indeed. There you go. Absolutely. And we talked about Even Steven in a previous conversation,
right, sure.
And you showed me that. Yeah. Great design. No, I love faceless heroes and villains. I think that's great.
I think the best way to describe him is Mr. A crossed with the Phantom Stranger. So he's got this really limitless power, but he is so defined by his philosophy. He does not waver from it, So
that's great. That's excellent, man. Very cool. If anyone also, hey, we could reach back if you want to talk about Carl's work at Marvel on things like Fantastic Four, and one of my
DC.
favorite miniseries that I always give it up to Carl for, and that was the Captain America story that he did when was it the Patriot or no?
Patriot, Captain America.
It was the Patriot. When it was, it's that retconned Marvel period when Cap is in the ice, but the All Winter Squad still existed. Right. So, and they had Captain America, if you read those stories from the post-war 40s. And it's like, all right, well, what's the deal? And it's like, well, they've retconned it that, as you might remember from a great What If story back in the day, right? They made Jeff the Patriot or the Captain America, but he was a non-powered Captain America.
Yeah, he was totally non-powered, and I had a lot of fun playing with it. I have to say, I would say, they always say write what you know. And in that particular case, and I didn't really think about this going in, but as I was working on the series, I realized this is I was drawing very much on my own experience when I got hired to write Superman. Because when I was hired to write Superman, I'd written a few backup stories. I take it back. I'd been co-writing Hawk and Dove with my first wife. But I had not done anything solo. And Superman obviously was a very big assignment. And I have to admit, even though I knew Dan Jurgens and I knew Jerry Ordway, I didn't really know Wheezy at the time. I knew Roger Stern. I knew these people and I felt comfortable with them, but I also felt I was, Jerry was stepping away. I was stepping into some very big boots to fill. And that was that very overwhelming feeling that maybe I'm out of my depth here. They seem to think I'm not, but I might be. I mean, I really tapped into that for the Patriot story, for the Captain America Patriot, where he's like going, am I really worthy of wearing this costume? Am I really worthy of being called Captain America? Because I don't have the super serum serum in me. And actually, I probably have to say one of my favorite moments in that story is when the All Winter Squad is together and Namor says something asinine, like he always says. Jeff Mace punches him in the face and breaks his hand, but he gains Namor's respect. No,
that's classic Marvel. That's like that Namor Daredevil fight in the early issues of Daredevil, where Namor beats the hell out of him, but it's like, yeah, but something, I respect this guy. He really kept trying. Yeah. It's like, all right, I'll let you live. And he walks away. Yeah. But no, I love that. That's great, man. And again, I wish you had more opportunities to tell Jeff Mace as Cap stories. I mean, that served its purpose. And I know it's on Marvel Unlimited, everybody, if you haven't read it. And it's really, truly, it's one of my favorite non-Steve Rogers Captain America stories. Because
thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, James Robinson, when I was working with him on Fantastic Four, he said, Carl, I loved your, I can't do a British accent, but Carl, I loved your Captain America Patriot story. I was very touched. Hey, it really has, seems to have legs. And, that just came out of the fact that Tom Brevoort had hired me to write an All Winter Squad story they did some timely anniversary issues. I don't even, was it the 60th or 80th anniversary? I don't know what it was, but he asked me to write an All Winter Squad, and I was writing it, and it had the Jeff Mace Captain America in it because of the timeline. And it was like going, and I decided to research him, and I'm going, so he just stepped down from being Captain America. He's Captain America and he steps away from it. I said, what would make you step away from that? And I got very interested in what was going on in his head. And it seemed to translate pretty well. So I will say, if you're a Captain America fan, I did the Captain America daily comic strip, which they'd collect into a weird square-bound trade paperback. And but I love old adventure comic strips. And I said to Brevoort again, I said, Superman in the 40s, he had a comic strip. Wonder Woman, Batman, the Invisible Scarlet O'Neil. Why didn't Captain America have a comic strip in the 40s? He really should have. And Tom goes, what a great idea. Why don't we do it? And so we did. And I produced basically 3 months worth of dailies and Sundays. And I structured it just like the old adventure strips, and they would lead into the Sundays. And the Sundays, I had to structure it so the first and second panels could be dropped out by some newspapers. I mean, I was really following the guidebook there, the rule book. And and that was one of the few projects I wrote, penciled, and inked myself. And I would have done that strip forever. I know I would have done that strip forever. I love that.
Well, I love it too, and I'm so glad you brought it up because people might be aware and remember it was a few years ago though, Wednesday Comics, which was
Yeah.
a really fun DC thing that they did.
Mhm.
But you really did go that extra step, as you point out, because yeah, a lot of the newspapers would, sometimes they'd only run Monday through Friday, they wouldn't run the Sunday. Sometimes they'd only run the Sunday.
Yeah.
So that just made the cartoonist's job that much harder to not only have the story make sense, or they'll drop Saturday, so Saturday should be part of the story but not incidental.
Yeah,
Yeah, all
exactly.
these different things. And yeah, man, you covered it, and that's no, it really is great. I don't know if it's on Marvel Unlimited. I certainly hope it is.
I don't know if it is either. I assume if you go on Amazon, you might be able to find the trade paperback. But and the one concession to modern readers is we colored the dailies. So dailies and Sundays were colored.
True.
So,
Do you
but
do you ever I haven't done it in a while, and it's here. Everybody, free commercial for Comics Kingdom, the King feature online thing, and you can construct your own daily comics page and really reach back, and if you want to make like a nostalgic or retro thing that you heard about and never had a chance, like you can get Alex Raymond Flash Gordon, or really a lot of other eras of Flash Gordon, for example, and you can make your own page, and it's great. And if I did it for a while and did nothing but adventure strips because I really appreciated them. I even found one of my favorite Big Ben Bolt, the boxing.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now over at King Features, Dan Scotty is doing Flash Gordon and doing a bang up job. I mean,
that's great to hear.
He took it over just a little over a year ago. And I have to say, I do not have a subscription to Comics Kingdom, so I haven't been able to follow it all the time. But Dan Scotty actually drew some of the Even Steven backups, not all of them, but some, because I love his work. And he is, and I'm not saying this lightly, he is a genius. He is a storytelling genius. And there's going to be a time when he's way up here in the stratosphere. He is going to be a superstar. He just has this innate ability, this innate understanding of how comics work, which astounds me. And but he's doing great stuff on Flash Gordon. Really great stuff.
That's cool. I'll give it up to Will Conrad and Jeremy Adams, who are doing it for Mad Cave. Doing a monthly Flash comic that just started this year.
Right.
And it's great. I mean, Will Conrad's killing it, and it's so funny. And I remember Jeremy telling me when I don't know how it was pitched, but it's like, well, wait a minute, you're kind of writing this like Flash is a superhero, and it's like, well, he really is kind of a superhero. I mean, I know he's a space opera guy, but I'm like, sure, he's a superhero. Come on, we could have gotten that Captain Action rubber mask and the outfit back when we were kids. Come on, absolutely, man. Did you beyond your own work and the guy working on Flash that worked on Even Steven for you and stuff, did you have favorite adventure strips when you were growing up, or ones you've gone back to? I find more now that I'm an adult and finding a lot that I want to go and check out.
I mean, I didn't know a lot about adventure strips until I got to the Kubert School, and then I discovered Kniff, and quite honestly, it was a life-changing moment. It was a life-changing moment. I mean, I'd certainly read strips in the newspaper growing up. I know, we didn't have there weren't probably a lot of adventure strips at the time, but we did have Dick Tracy in our newspaper. And that was during the period, because this was the 60s, when Dick Tracy was on the moon and just really strange things.
Yes.
But I do remember he had a villain called Half and Half, who was much like Two-Face. He had half, and as a kid, that guy creeped me out. He really creeped me out. But as an adult, I have a deep fondness for Moon Maid and the Moon stories of Dick Tracy.
Yes.
And and everyone says, well, Dick Tracy shouldn't be a science fiction strip, but I mean, he had a two-way wrist radio in the 40s. It was, obviously Chester Gould always was interested in science fiction. Clearly, he just kind of got carried away in the 60s because it was everywhere and he just like ate it up. But
it was also in the middle of the space race.
Yeah.
And Major Matt Mason. I had my
I had Major Matt Mason.
I had my G.I. Joes, but I loved Major Matt Mason.
Now there's a 12-inch figure of an alien. We had a helmet. I forget his name. Something Laser or something.
No, I don't remember either,
Laser. Man. I don't know. But he went with the Major Matt Masons, but he was the size of a Captain Action or G.I. Joe back in the 60s. And then there was the little alien with like the greenish head, and I don't remember his name either.
Neither do I. And I know there were a couple other astronauts too.
Yeah, I know there's a guy in a red outfit.
And a blue outfit.
Yep. Major Matt Mason's the only one I remember too, name-wise.
And I don't know if you knew this, but supposedly Tom Hanks was flirting with the idea. Supposedly, now I don't know, maybe because of From the Earth to the Moon, they tacked this onto him too. But he's the right age, and it would be great to see. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it would be disappointing, like the live-action Thunderbirds movie that Jonathan Frakes directed was unfortunate.
I don't think I ever saw that.
It's too bad. And it's a shame because he was on a roll with the Star Trek stuff.
Right.
And then the Thunderbirds movie really, I think, killed him as far as motion pictures. And now he does direct TV, and he does a hell of a job on the new Star Trek episodes.
Yeah.
So, hey, I wanted to ask you, I'm going to talk, hopefully I'm going to talk to Jerkins tomorrow night about this as well.
Oh. But
I'm glad you mentioned Superman, and of course your run on Superboy as well. Are you watching Lois and Clark, or Lois and Superman and Lois?
No,
that's okay.
And that is nothing against the show. I mean, my life, I get up early in the morning, and I mean, I'm usually up by 4:30 in the morning.
Wow. And
I try to work before the kids get up for school and get them off to school. And then at about 2:30 at the very latest, my day is done, because that's when the kids get home. And between then and the time they go to bed, there's always something happening. My daughter is extremely active in soccer. And so she has soccer practice every night, or futsal practice, or a game, or both. And so someone is always driving her around. And, we have some therapy sessions for our son that we have to take him to and stuff like that. So really, once school gets out, I got no time to do anything. Then the kids go to bed, and it's 9:30. And I got to be bed by 10 if I'm getting up at 4:30. And my wife and I usually sit down, maybe watch half an hour of a show of something, or maybe we just catch up and decompress from the day and figure out what's happening the next day. So that's why I have not watched the Lois and Superman show. Superman and Lois, whatever.
Superman and Lois, yeah.
I
had no problem, man. I was just curious because much like the Penguin on the HBO Max show, they're doing different things with Luthor. Right. And I find it kind of intriguing. And going back to your own Superman run, did you have a chance to play with the big toys while you were writing it?
Well, what do you mean by that? What?
As far as the villains,
Yeah, I think I got, we did Parasite. We did, Luthor was basically a supporting character in the book at that point. And I really enjoyed Luthor a lot. I thought he was a great, great character. And I always liked it because, I'm stating the obvious here, but the reason he pairs off so well with Superman is Superman really in his heart, he loves humanity and he wishes he was human. And it's the one thing he will never be. He will never be human. Luthor wishes he was superhuman, and it's the one thing he will never be. He will never be superhuman. And that's why they're just like such perfect opposites and work so well off each other.
I spoke to Elliot Magan last week, and he's got a new Luthor autobiography.
I've seen that.
It's great, and I don't know if you read Miracle Monday and Last Son of Krypton.
I have not read, but Mark Waid speaks very highly of them.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
No, I would love to. I have to admit, probably the next book on my reading list, and when I say reading, I mean audiobooks, so that when I'm inking, I listen to things. But I'm probably going to listen to Gail Simone's Red Sonja novel.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Excellent. I'm hoping to talk to her sooner than later about that very book.
That jet-setting young lady, she's always out and about somewhere in the middle of writing every other comic that's out there, it seems.
That's true.
She's a great person.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. No, that's terrific. Here, another classic Karl Kesell story. Was it in FF or was it somewhere else where we finally learned that Ben Grimm is a Jewish gentleman?
Yeah, I did that story. I did that on FF 55, whatever volume that was. That was a case where Tom Brevoort needed a couple of fill-in issues, and he said specifically, he goes, but I don't want him to feel like fill-in issues. So what can we do that will make them stand out? And there's a classic drawing of Ben with a yarmulke and a prayer shawl that Kirby did. And I said, why don't we just make that canon? Why don't we reveal, Ben is Jewish? And obviously not practicing. He's never mentioned it in 40 years. But it just seemed, it just seems to me that while that was never the intention when Ben Grimm was first introduced, my personal feeling is as Kirby drew him, he kept putting more of himself into the Ben Grimm character. I mean, he grew up on the Lower East Side, like Kirby did, smoked cigars like Kirby did. I just think Jax more and more saw himself in Ben, and that led to the drawing of the prayer shawl and yarmulke. And so why not? Let's make him Jewish. And so that's one of my two big contributions to Fantastic Four, my favorite Marvel comic. So I've made two lasting contributions to the series, and one is revealing, because I can't say I thought of it, revealing that Ben is Jewish, and the other is I did an FF annual, and in the course of that annual, I established that it was set in on an alternate timeline, but in that timeline, their daughter Val was older, and I established in that story that Val was smarter than Reed, that she's actually the smartest person in the family. And so they've obviously ran with that too. And I'm very glad. So those are the two things I established about the FF. I did try to establish a third thing that no one else has picked up on. I did an FF one shot, and I established that Johnny is a really great cook. And I thought, he knows all about fire. It's like instinctive with him. He should be a fabulous chef, and no one else seems to think that. So I think that's like, he drifts from job to job. No, he should be a chef, he should be one of those superstar chefs, he can flambe things in his hand,
That's a missed opportunity from a marketing standpoint. God, you'd think that like Marvel would be, wait a minute, we really need to get a chef in here and get some Johnny Storm recipes together. I think that's a great idea, Carl. You talk to Brevoort about that. I think that's a good special project.
It was in a book that was published. I established that there was a scene where Johnny and Sue were making chili, and Johnny kept going, "You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong." And that was my way of saying Johnny is a great instinctive chef.
Any good stories of your time inking John Byrne?
Well, I really loved inking John Byrne. That's all I can say. Obviously, not many years before I was inking him, I was waiting anxiously for every issue of the X-Men or every issue of the Fantastic Four. I mean, I was trying to remember just the other day, because I went to the Kubert School for 1 year and decided I didn't have what it took to be a cartoonist, because I saw some really, really talented people around me, and I was fresh out of high school, and I was thinking, I don't have what it takes. So I left the Kubert School and went to a regular art school, and I thought, well, I'm going to take a break now, take a break from comics, see what else I might like to do with my life. But you go at that point, you could go to a drugstore and they'd still have the spinner rack, and so like my college girlfriend and I would go to the drugstore and pick up some beer and stuff. And what's on the spinner rack? And I'm pretty sure the comic that drew me back in was, Wolverine Fights Alone, that X-Men issue where Wolverine fights the 6 Hellfire Club guys. And John Byrne was always a favorite of mine, a huge favorite of mine. So the chance to ink him was a dream come true. And I slaved over these pages. I know John was a speed demon, probably still is a speed demon. I mean, he would draw 2 or 3 pages, by dinner time. And even said to me one time when we were talking, actually on the phone, he actually said, well, noon, but I've drawn my 3 pages for today, so I can quit. And I was like, and it would take me 12 or 14 hours to ink some of those pages because they were really detailed. He would draw everything. He just, I'm not sure. John seemed to have the ability to look at something and his mind could file it away and he could reproduce it in his pencils almost effortlessly. And I'm not trying to make it sound like he did everything easily. I'm sure he worked like hell to get as good as he did or is. But I mean, there was one time when I was inking some stalactites and stalagmites, and they looked like rock, but they looked like drippy rock. And I'm going, he's got this texture down perfect. He just seemed to have that way of taking it in, and it would just go out as his pencil and onto the page. It's an amazing thing,
Did you feel that? Because I literally, I was talking to Dennis Cowan a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking him about Sienkiewicz inking him. And I asked him in his case, because sometimes after Sienkiewicz would get it done with an artist, depending on who the artist was, it would look different from what I was used to just as a reader.
Mm-hmm.
And I used Mike Norton as an example because Bill worked over Mike on Green Arrow, for example.
Right.
And it came out very different than Mike's style.
Sure.
And I was wondering, I asked Dennis, I said, how much do you think Bill changed your pencils or whatever? And he said, well, sometimes he finished things and sometimes he just, kind of enhanced what I did. Did you have, as an inker, did you have other artists? And, if it's like not good to name them or whatever, but yeah, what level of inking did you like a difference from, say, somebody like John, and compared to another artist?
Well, I mean, honestly, with John, I tried not to screw it up. That was my main goal inking John, because his stuff was very complete. There was a few times I did mess things up. I think the first Superman issue I inked, there was a shot of Superman's feet, and John hadn't drawn any soles on his boots. And I thought, oh, John forgot the soles on his boot. I will add those in. And John called me up. He goes, Superman doesn't need soles on his shoes. He's invulnerable. And, oh, I'm so sorry. So that was me being an idiot and trying to help out. But so John really, he had it all thought out. He, everything was there for a reason, no doubt about it. I know when I inked Tom Grummett, I always loved Tom's stuff. It's full of energy. His expressions and dynamics cannot be beat, believe me. But I do think there's a softness to some of Tom's stuff that I tried to give a little harder edge to, just to firm it up a little bit. That's what I do with Tom's stuff. I know David Hahn, who I'm working with on Impossible Jones, he's got a very simple style. And I think sometimes it can be, I try to bring a little bit of an organic feel to his work, because I feel, his stuff could be a little too clean and look a little too, I've actually used the word aloof sometimes for his work. And David thought that was a good word for his work. And so I just try to give it a little warmer feel, a little more organic feel. That's what I think adds to what he's doing. What he's doing is already great. So let's see if we can add to that. Now, maybe I don't always add to it, but that's always my intention. So yeah, I mean, different, you look at the penciler and you try to figure out, really what I always tried to do is you try to figure out what is the penciler trying to do here. And then you try to figure out how to do that in ink, and sometimes you go like I do with Tom or with David, this stuff is great. I just think it should be pushed in this direction, just a little bit in this direction. And I don't know, I think with David and with Tom, at least, those collaborations have worked really well.
Absolutely. That's some of the longest stuff. I'll get back to David Hahn in a second, but I want to acknowledge Mitchell Coleman, who has a couple questions. He says, hello, John and Carl. And he says, here's his question, but he has a comment after the question. Why is it that Amazing Man hasn't gotten reprinted before from DC? And then he also wanted to know, let you know, he really enjoyed your work on Superboy.
Well, thank you, Mitchell. Thank you very much.
So Amazing Man, yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of Amazing Man fans out there.
There are a lot of Amazing Man fans out there. I mean, I get asked about Amazing Man more than you would think. And all I can say is, once again, I had very little to do with Amazing Man. I inked Stephen DeStefano, and he and Bob Rozakis were the masterminds behind that. And I didn't even ink all of Amazing Man. I inked, six issues maybe. But it holds a huge special place in my heart. And I think Stephen is a true genius in the field. He just is so amazing at what he does. And I don't know. I would love to see DC. You've got omnibuses of everything out there. Why can't they do Amazing Man omnibus? These omnibuses are going to break my bookshelves,
Oh my God.
And I'm not running out to buy them, but they put one out that has my stuff in it. So they send it to me. I'm like,
well, that's nice.
What's in this huge box that just showed up?
Yeah, on the one hand, I love them, but on the other hand, trying to read them and stuff, it cuts off my circulation in my thighs every time I try to read it.
Yeah. I did
You
buy
need one of those dictionary stands to hold it when you read it and everything.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through the Walter Simonson Orion omnibus. The one he did with the new God characters. So, and I read most of those when they came out, but not all of them. So, and anyways, yeah, those omnibuses are crazy.
Well, Mitchell is hoping that it still happens. He said it took nearly 30 years for Giffen's 5 years later to become an omnibus. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, it can always happen. I mean, it can always happen. I would like to think it will happen. So,
how much of your like some of the event stuff that you did, like Final Night, has that been omnibide? Or
I don't think it's in an omnibus. Yeah, I mean they put out various collections of that, but I don't think it's ever been put into an omnibus. I don't know. I guess they could sit down and pull together all of the tie-ins. That's what they do with the omnibus.
Right.
Here. So I don't know. No one's talked to me about it, but they don't need to talk to me about it. Obviously, it's their stuff. They can do what they want with it. So,
no, I understand. I would be curious if you ever get to watch Superman and Lois to hear what you think of his sons, who are that's.
I did not know he had sons.
Oh, I'm sorry, spoiler. It's. And as a reader yourself, and I remember the 80-page giant when they reprinted the imaginary tale of Superman's sons, and they kept the mother in the shadows because this is during the Lana Lois rivalry and everything.
Right. I remember those stories.
It is interesting, and there are, without spoiling what you'll discover when you see the show, it is interesting comparing that Silver Age story. I don't know if you ever read that Silver Age story back in the day.
I did a million years ago. Yeah, a million years ago. And I have to admit, as you were talking, I got it confused with is it the Super Sons, the one where it was the son of Batman and the son of Superman in World's Finest having
in the 70s. Yeah, that was a great series. I loved those stories. Absolutely. Yeah. They were ridiculous too, but a lot of fun. Bob Haney, man.
He was a crazy man.
But they were fun. I don't know, man. Again, I think if you're a 12-year-old kid, they're fun stories.
Well, I have to admit, his Brave and the Bold, which constantly is kind of poo-pooed because it never paid attention to continuity. I loved those books when I was a kid. He Sergeant Rock teaming up with Batman, and it didn't really matter how it fit into their continuities. It was just a really great team up.
It was, and it was great seeing like Rock as like an old man because obviously it still acknowledged his time back in the 40s and everything, and it was only 30 years later. But now he's in his late 50s, or maybe he's in his 60s now. Who knows? But it was those stories were great. Oh, here Mitchell wants to know what you thought of the Superman Electric Blue and Red back in the 90s. That whole period.
Well, I was working on the book then, so I loved it. No, I mean that actually. Not the Red and Blue, that came later, but the whole changing Superman's powers was probably the only big idea I brought to the table. I went to one of the Superman summits and I said, what if we change his powers? I just thought it would be really interesting if Superman woke up one day, had different powers, and then we could see Superman learning how to use his powers, which Superman knows how to fly, he knows how to use X-ray vision, he knows how to use heat vision. These are not things he has to learn about. And I thought it would be really interesting to put Superman in a learning position where he doesn't know his limits. Can I do this? Can I not do this? What will be the cost of doing this? And I didn't even have any idea for what the new powers would be. I just thought it would be a fun set of paces to put the character through. And luckily, people agreed. And I believe it was actually John Bogdanoff who came up with kind of an energy-based character. And so that's what we ran with. And then later on, since he had a kind of blue outfit then that Ron Friends designed, I'm not sure who came up with the idea of splitting him into Superman Red Blue. Might have been Jurgens. You can ask Dan about that.
I will.
He might have been the one that put that idea on the table, which was a natural and fun outgrowth of what we were doing. So, it was a fun. I enjoyed playing with the character like that. I really did.
Well, back to David Hahn, who's doing a great job with you on Impossible. And forgive me, who's your colorist as well?
Ryan Cody is our current colorist, so and he's doing an amazing job.
Well, I was going to say, and because David did so many of those great Batman 66
Right.
comics as well for DC in the 2000s. And listen, if you haven't picked up Impossible Jones yet, if you're a fan of that style of superhero stuff, this is what Carl and David are giving you in every issue. And it's good, bouncy. They're fun adventure comics.
They are fun adventure comics. Yes.
So, and they're not, up with people fun. They are fun. And again, the fact that Impossible Jones is basically like fooling this city into supporting her and everything as a superhero. Meanwhile, it's a little Thunderbolt kind of individual Thunderbolt, if you will, kind of page.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference, because I know Kurt Busiek really well, the biggest difference in my mind between Thunderbolts and Impossible Jones is Thunderbolts went into it with that plan. We will fool people into thinking we are heroes. And Impossible Jones stumbles into it backwards. She gains powers, but she feels that what happened to her was because she was betrayed by her gang. So when she gets powers, she goes after her gang for payback. She's going to get those guys who left her for dead. And, but you know what? The population watching her do that think she is a character with powers going after villains. She must be a superhero. So they go, "Aren't you a superhero?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm a superhero." And so she did not plan this. She stumbled into it. And in many ways, she continues to make it up as she goes along. She did not have a Baron Zemo plan.
This is true. All right, there you go. There's the difference. So to wrap up now, Impossible Jones, the current issue, out on Kickstarter.
On Kickstarter right now.
Mitchell is asking, and I'm sure others are as well, to get the previous volumes. Are you selling that through the Kickstarter? Are you selling it through your website? What's the best way to catch up on the story?
You can get the 2 other hardcovers through the Kickstarter, which is a level called the Impossible Gospel. So it is all of her adventures, and those are available on the Kickstarter. They're available as PDFs or print copies. So you can get the whole shebang if you want. It's not hundreds of issues, so it's easy to catch up and be current. And I'd like to think most people would enjoy it. And I know David and I certainly enjoy doing it. And I will say, very easy to remember the Kickstarter. It's just impossiblekickstarter.com. Takes you right to the page. impossiblekickstarter.com. And there you are. You're all set.
That's great. Excellent, Carl, as always. And no, I'm really happy for you. And again, I'm glad it's the story's progressing nicely. You also get a taste, everybody, on the Kickstarter page of a couple pages of the latest
pages
book.
of the next issue, featuring the best getaway driver on the West Coast, Clown Car, who we introduced in an earlier episode, and I just love him so much. It was funny with I know we got to go, but the funny part.
No, you're good.
Funny part about Clown Car is we wanted to do like an evil circus sort of group of characters.
Sure.
And so I thought, well, everyone does the clown, the evil clown, and I said, what can we do with a clown that would be a little different? And I thought of the word Clown Car, and I thought, well, he's a clown who can make duplicates of himself. And David said, okay, that's great. And the only difference between the duplicates is they all have different colored noses. Otherwise, they look exactly alike. And the red nose is the number 1 Clown Car. And then David drew these. And I also had the idea that he'd be a really good getaway driver. I thought that fit in with the whole Clown Car idea.
Sure.
And then David started drawing this sequence in a much earlier comic with Clown Car, and he looked like the sourest, like most bitter guy I'd ever seen. And so I started writing him that way, and he's a hoot to write because he's really not very likable. So he's this clown that is not, he says funny things, but you kind of laugh because no clown should say those things,
I love it, man. That's excellent. Oh, and Chud Babies, excellent name for a YouTube. There you go. Chud Babies loves you, Carl.
I think he means Clown Car. He doesn't love me. No. Whoever he loves, that's fine.
I think he made the comment before your description of Clown Car, but okay. I love it. I think that's fantastic. That's what I'm saying, man. No, the Imp verse
Okay,
yeah, the Impossible Jones verse that Karl has created has a lot of interesting characters that you're going to want to learn more about by picking up Impossible Jones. So check out the Kickstarter page. Again, if you don't want to buy the hardbacks, you can get PDFs of the previous issues as well, and that's great, man. I'm really happy for you, and as always, I'm happy to talk to you and catch up. And I hope everything else is going well for you.
Yeah, it's going well. It's always great to talk to you, John.
Likewise, man. Absolutely, man. No, come back when the next when the next book is ready.
And the Even Steven book.
Even Steven, exactly, man. No,
I have this feeling. it'll be our best-selling book. I think it'll outsell Impossible Jones. I have this feeling.
Well, it's a great design, and if you missed it earlier, think Mr. A meets
Phantom Stranger.
The Phantom Stranger. Yeah, I love that idea. So very cool. Always good to talk to Karl Kesell. Thank you, dude.
Thank you very much, John.
And we're going to talk to Dan Jurgens tomorrow night. That should be a fun conversation, and we'll see what else the week has planned for us here at Word Balloon. But everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.